run election because she makes such good bread, and so we wanted to make sure she was in the Ag Committee. No, that's not why you won. Representative Rozier now has graced us with some sourdough bread last week and now this week, and this is chocolate chip or M&M, and it looks messy. So I'm sure it's going to be very good. So hopefully if there's any left, y'all can pass it around and take your own chance on food safety, I guess. But anyway, so that's what that, there's not a possum in the sack or anything like that. It's actually Representative Blex and his semi-clean knife. Yes. You guys were okay. You didn't see it. We're not state inspected anyway. So, okay. Yes. No, they'll be all right. I think those guys are used to it. I think a seasoned knife will probably cure your ills of a lot of things. We want to recognize tomorrow's agribusiness leaders in the crowd, and with Feed and Grain folks, they're here. And tomorrow night they will also have a reception out at the Topeka Country Club. So hopefully, members, you can go to that. And to get a chance, I bet you probably have folks from pretty close to home around there to visit with as well. And so, thank you. Welcome to committee. We usually go an hour or two late because we start. No, I'm just kidding. We will do our best to get to going. Also, committee. I want to introduce you to Kaylee, right? Woodcock. She's my intern. She is a freshman. Stand up. She is that tall. So she is taller than me. And people want to know what I'd done wrong because there was a college student that was trying to keep up with my short little legs that was running from meeting to meeting. So she's a freshman at Kansas State University from the state of Virginia. So she learned right and came west, young lady. And so she is studying animal science and pre-vet. So we hope that things work, that she will hopefully stay in the state. So she will be here on Tuesdays and some Thursdays in between class schedule. So if you need anything from her or from me, she's one and she'll be learning. And if you have any advice to give her, you know she won't learn a thing from me. So with that, any bill introductions? Any bill introductions? Seeing no bill introductions, we will move on. Now, in the past, I think I will just choose, unless you all picked out your own order, which way you want to go. This is the annual, by statute, the Kansas commodities that have a commission, which is a checkoff program, are to report an annual report to the Kansas Legislature, and because of that, it comes to us. This is the Agriculture Committee. This morning, I believe they all presented to the Senate Ag Committee. And so with that, so I will go, it looked, well, not quite in alphabetical order, but we will go the way it is typed up. So corn is first. So Kent Romy from Iuka. Yes, he's familiar. He's been here a couple of years. So, I said Romy, I'm sorry, Moore.
That's all right. That's okay.
You know who I met, so.
I do.
Kent Moore
Yep.
from Iuka. So go ahead, welcome back to committee.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. It's an absolute pleasure to be here this afternoon and give you a little update on the activities of the Kansas Corn Commission over the past year. Kansas corn crop in 2024 was good crop, and we were very, very thankful for that. We had kind of had a couple of years in 22 and 23 where we had a little bit of production hiccups because of weather events, whether it be drought or just a lot of severe storms. We'd kind of suffered a little bit on the production standpoint the previous couple of years. So we were very thankful to have a good corn crop in 2024. We had about 5.8 million acres of harvested corn, producing 748 million bushels according to the USDA's last report. I also would like to take a moment here to introduce a couple of guests I have with me. We've got Josh Rowe back there, who is the Chief Executive Officer of Kansas Corn. Taylor Williamson, back in the back corner, is also on staff with Kansas Corn, and he takes care of a lot of policy initiatives for us. The checkoff for corn and other commodities started, as you well know, by statute in 1977. The Kansas Corn Commission now has an assessment of 1 cent per bushel at the first point of sale. So that's what generates our funding, and then we turn around and try to use that funding for the betterment of Kansas corn producers. And I'll try to describe a little bit of that today. I also want to take a little bit of a moment to recognize that the Growers Association, there's kind of two separate deals. There's the commission and then there's the Growers Association. The Kansas Corn Growers Association was started in 1975. So we are thrilled to be celebrating our 50th year. We're going to celebrate that later this week in Salina at our Kansas Corn Symposium and Kansas Commodity Classic. But as I was thinking about it this morning, I think what struck me the most about that is just the number of volunteers through the years that have taken an interest in promoting commodities, whether it be corn, wheat, or anything else you're going to hear today, and have given their time and expertise to sit on these commissions and work on behalf of Kansas agriculture. So what do we do with that? What do we do with our commission dollars? Well, our main objective is to increase the use of corn. I mean, that's really what it always boils down to is demand. And we can produce. Sometimes we struggle with production, but what we always need is demand. So a lot of our dollars are directed towards things that try to increase the demand for our product, whether it be through feed or through ethanol. I mean, those are the two primary outlets for field corn in the state of Kansas. And you can kind of break that down into thirds. About a third of our Kansas corn goes to ethanol, and about a third to feed, and a third goes out of state. Well, you think, well, what happens to that third that goes out of state? Really, it ends up kind of the same places. It still kind of goes to ethanol and goes to feed. If you think about corn that's produced in the southeast corner of Kansas, a lot of that flows to the southeast into the poultry industry to the southeast of Kansas. So it ends up being a feedstock. So again, a little bit of a highlight of what we do. I guess I would concentrate on a couple of things. Ethanol has been a real boon to Kansas agriculture, and one of the ways that we can add value to our product is to refine it into ethanol and then promote that use in our motor vehicles. And so we spend a lot of time, effort, and commission checkoff dollars towards that. And what we've done with that is also in-state and out-of-state. But in-state, we've done a lot of cost share with station owners and fuel retailers to try to get their infrastructure in a place where that they can sell a higher blend of ethanol. And so we've dedicated a lot of dollars to that. It's been very successful. There's always work to do in increasing what we feel like is we are increasing the consumer's opportunity to what we really want is that consumer to have the opportunity to pick a higher blend fuel that can meet their needs at a lower cost. Because I mean, you can drive by any gas station and you see what the gasoline price is for, let's say, a premium, something that has no ethanol in it, and then the higher the ethanol content, the lower the price. And that is bottom line what drives consumers is price. So any effort that we can make to increase that blending rate, we're going to take advantage of that. And the other thing that we've done relative to that is a lot of the ethanol plants in the state of Kansas have a kind of a competitive advantage of trying to send ethanol to California. So we have invested time and resources and also leveraged our dollars with a couple of other states of Nebraska and Missouri to go out to California and encourage retail and consumer sales in the California market, because it's just huge. I mean, everybody kind of gets in their head that, well, by gosh, California has this great big EV mandate, et cetera, and they have had. But you also have to recognize that there are, millions and millions of motor vehicles out there that we can have an impact on and hopefully provide that ethanol out there for them to have a cleaner burning, more cost-efficient way for them to fuel their vehicles. The other thing I would highlight before I stop is about 9 years ago, we struggled a little bit with how we were reaching students. And so what we did is we set up a team of people at Kansas Corn to go ahead and develop our own curriculum. And we provide that curriculum K through 12. And I think the thing that to highlight is when we started that in 2015-16, we reached 30 teachers and 900 students. And last year that expanded to, we reached 3,844 teachers and over 104,000 students. And the thing that's unique about that program is, yes, we have developed all the curriculum, but we've also made it possible to where for the instructors to have the capacity and the ability to utilize us for all of the materials to complete the curriculum. I mean, if it's a science lab to grow seedling corn, if it's a science lab to distill a small amount of ethanol, we provide that to that teacher. So they love it. I mean, because a lot of times they'll have great curriculum ideas and then just not have the stuff that it takes to do it. So that's been a really successful program. I think we're kind of on the verge of taking that to other schools in other states through the national corn growers. So it's been extremely successful. Proud of that. One thing I always try to highlight anytime I'm here, as you well know, the checkoff dollars are refundable. If a producer decides that, hey, I'd like my penny back, they can get it. No problem. We honor those requests, and but I always try to point out what our refund rate was. And for 2024, our refund rate was 3.84%, and that's down from fiscal year 23 of 6.9%. So that's extremely low and historically low rate of producers wanting that penny back. And I think that goes to show that Kansas Corn is out there and visible to Kansas corn producers. They understand what the purpose of that penny is. They understand the value of investing that penny and using it to leverage ways to help Kansas agriculture. That's the bottom line for all of us. So with that, I would stand for any questions you might have. I truly appreciate the opportunity, truly appreciate each and every one of you and the service that you provide for the state of Kansas.
Again, thank you so much. Questions? Representative Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Could you give me any information about anything that you've done to look at the amount of water per bushel of corn produced in the state? Is there any data on that?
Yeah,
and also the utilization of nitrogen in corn production, where we're going with that. And
right. I think without question, I mean, I'm an irrigator in Northwest Pratt County. The thing that I can tell you in regards to that is that I produce more bushels today with less acre feet of water than I did 20, 25, 30 years ago. And you know, part of that I think is basically the want and the need and the necessity to be as absolutely as efficient as possible for every input that I have. And so I take it upon myself, and I know that I have neighbors and friends that do the same, that try to be as frugal as possible when it comes to inputs. One of those inputs is water. One of those inputs is nitrogen. You know, without question, you know, all of the things that are driving precision agriculture are based on being more efficient. And on my own farm, I mean, I extensively use climatic data to figure out corn water use. I use soil moisture probes. I use these little gizmos that measure the diameter of the stalk through the day to give me an idea of how much stress that corn plant is under. So those technologies are out there, and they're just going to continue to expand and get more widely adapted. So I understand the concern of the state about water. Yeah, we have concerns. I also know that I want to take the steps that are necessary to ensure my farm's future. I'm a fifth generation farm. There's a sixth one out there too, that for my farm and others. So I mean, it's in all of our best interest to try to figure out and be as efficient as possible, at the same time provide the economic jolt in the arm that ag supplies to the state of Kansas.
Other questions? So let's talk a little bit about ethanol, even though it's not a renewable fuels discussion today. But, you know, there's been a lot in the news with President Trump now and this executive order of possibly year-round E15. We're still trying to figure out what that means. What is the future for ethanol? And because it has a direct effect on corn production in Kansas, you know, feedlots are, you know, it's a pretty good time right now to be in the livestock business. So they're feeding corn, but that's a lower price. But I want to focus a little bit on what you're saying with ethanol in the future there, if the federal government policy might change, or do you think that this administration continues to embrace ethanol?
You know, I kind of think they'll end up embracing ethanol. It just makes too much sense to me. You know, you have to have an oxygenate in fuel so that it burns cleaner and we have less smog and all this other stuff. I mean, you can use a extremely toxic MTBE for the same darn thing that ethanol provides in fuel. So in my mind, the fact that we can produce ethanol on Kansas farms and Kansas ethanol plants, turn around and provide that one is better for our air quality in urban areas. Two, it's a value add to that basic commodity. So I really think that the future for ethanol continues to be bright, because I think that the consumer understands price, and a lot of times when that ethanol gets blended into that fuel, you see a lower price, and that's the bottom line for a lot of people, like me.
Let's talk about corn production. You know, many of us involved in agriculture just kind of throw that around, but there are different corns. As far as a lot of the corn that you see as you drive on the interstate is not the same corn that you say get in the can or food grade and so on. There are
Sure.
different types.
Yeah, right. You know, you go to the store and you buy half a dozen ears of sweet corn. I mean, that is corn that is grown for, you know, direct human food consumption. When you talk about corn that I grow, I understand that it is a feedstock, and you know, it used to be a feedstock primarily and totally for livestock. Well, that changed when ethanol came. So, and you talk about there's also the thing that came with that ethanol was a huge plus was the synergy that takes place between ethanol production and cattle production, because when corn goes through that fermenting process, you're left with something that's called or distiller's grain, and Kansas feedlots have taken advantage of that nutritious feedstock. It's still great for a ration to feed cattle, and so it you know, I think ethanol again has a place in the future, and I think that Kansas farmers and farmers throughout the nation can adequately supply both.
Very good. Other questions? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate
it. Thank you.
If you'll be available, if anybody has at the end, that'd be fine. Mr. Supis, are you wheat today? So Ron Supis, Kansas Wheat Commission.
Did you say week or wheat?
Well, no, however you want to take that. No.
I came to the right place. I see a lot of bread around here, a lot of flour. That's pretty cool. If it helps, I'll come back again and again if you want to keep indulging. Thank you, Chairman Rogers and the House Committee for inviting me to speak to you about wheat today. In addition to copies of this testimony, we have presented you with a copy of our 2024 annual statement and audit. So as I go through this, you can try to follow what you have, but I'll probably leave a few things out, not because they're not important, but because I'm sure you want to ask more questions than information I have to give you. Kansas Wheat Commission was established by the Kansas Legislature in 1957. It is funded by a wheat assessment of 2 cents. We apply that 2 cents at the point of sale, and farmers are represented by 9 commission members scattered throughout the state. 2024 marked the 150th anniversary of the introduction of Turkey Red by Kansas Mennonite farmers who immigrated from the Ukraine. Bernard Workington, a Mennonite miller from Crimea, settled near Halstead, Kansas in 1871. He carried the seeds of Turkey Red wheat, a hard winter wheat variety that was tremendously successful in Eastern Europe. The first field of Turkey Red wheat was planted in Marion County in 1873 and harvested in the summer of 1874. By 1960, we planted about 11,500,000 acres of wheat in Kansas. While Kansas wheat acres have decreased since that time, since the highs of the late 1900s, research funded by Kansas wheat farmers through the Kansas Wheat Commission Wheat Assessment has focused on improved varietal development, more than doubling yields, without the use of certain technologies such as genetic modification. So if anyone tries to tell you that we have genetically modified wheat in this country, that's not true. We are running tests on some, but there's none being grown commercially. Not to say that's going to be the case in the future, but Kansas State University is emerging as the world's foremost location for global food systems and biosecurity innovations. And as a premier economic driver for the state of Kansas, the Kansas Wheat Commission and Kansas Association of Wheat Growers have pledged $1.5 million over the next 5 years to support this plan for signature research and innovation partnership centers. With these private commitments, Kansas State was able to qualify for an additional state 3-to-1 matching funding, which will diversify Kansas' value-added food and agricultural economy. Kansas Wheat Center, or Innovation Center, represents the single largest investment by wheat producers in the nation. The Kansas Wheat Commission hears from more than 24 researchers each year from Kansas State University, from the USDA, and other key entities about a variety of research proposals that help wheat farmers increase yields and improve profitability, plus ensure the quality and integrity of Kansas-grown wheat to end users and consumers. Again, this year, Kansas Wheat Commission has invested more than $1.3 million in research. Kansas Wheat RX is a partnership between Kansas Wheat and Kansas State Research and Extension to disseminate the latest research recommendations for high-yielding and high-quality wheat to Kansas wheat farmers. This effort is a combination of suggested management practices for economical and sustainable production of high-quality winter wheat in Kansas. Wheat RX is a series of extension publications and other outreach designed to address key management areas of hard winter wheat. These publications contain recent data based on novel research funded in part by wheat farmers through the Kansas Wheat Checkoff. Several Wheat RX education seminars have been held across the state. Perhaps some of you have heard of them or even been involved in them, but they've been very successful. In 2024, Kansas Wheat, in collaboration with Kansas State University researchers, kicked off a new educational campaign aimed at farmers, landowners, financial institutions, and policymakers. Wheat Beyond the Value of the Grain emphasizes the wide-ranging advantages of including winter wheat in cropping systems, extending far beyond the grain's market price. Wheat as a crop brings many benefits to the cropping system. Research conducted globally shows that including wheat in a cropping rotation significantly boosts yields of other crops like corn and soybeans compared to a monoculture system. A long-term Kansas study reported a 12 bushel per acre increase in soybean yields when rotated with winter wheat, regardless of the tillage system used and compared to continuous soybean cultivation. Similarly, western Kansas corn yields were 14.7 bushels per acre higher after wheat. In addition to research, Kansas Wheat Commission uses the wheat assessment to promote wheat in the U.S. and abroad. Each year, Kansas farmers export roughly half of our crop. This past year, we exported approximately 130 million bushels. 2 years ago, in 2023, we had a short crop, a little bit over 200 million bushels. This past year, 305 million bushels. It always helps when it rains or snows. So overall, wheat exports were consistent year over year. Hard red winter wheat exports are pretty consistent, like I said, at 130 million bushels or so. The Russian invasion is the biggest influencer of wheat now. What's happening in Russia and Ukraine is affecting all of the wheat prices throughout the world. They seem to be flooding the market at cheaper prices, and we're having trouble competing with that. They are going to slow down. They're starting to cut back a little bit. Plus, they're needing more money, so they're assessing the farmer over there a little bit more so they can supply their military. Because of the importance of exports, trade issues have been on the forefront. Kansans serve in trade policy leadership positions with U.S. Wheat, the National Association of Wheat Growers. In fact, Gary Miller-Shasky of Lakin is currently serving as vice chairman of U.S. Wheat. Chris Tanner of Norton was just selected as secretary of the National Association of Wheat Growers. The Kansas Wheat Commission continues to be a top supporter of the Kansas Foundation for Agriculture. In fact, we have a room set aside for that agriculture entity to exist in our building, but it's important, just like Corn mentioned, to educate the public and especially the young people. So we're proud to do that. The Kansas Wheat Commission belongs to two national consumer education organizations. This would be more for domestic than for like U.S. wheat exporting commodity. The Wheat Foods Council and the Home Baking Association, both of those organizations delve into nutrition of wheat and come up with research pertaining to that, and then we disseminate that information. Research also shows consumers are more interested in learning about where their food comes from than ever before. While they are interested in the farm-to-fork story, studies have shown that shared values are 3 to 5 times more important to consumers than facts. We are leveraging this information to show farming practices with our consumers online through a campaign called Eat Wheat, which you guys have already done. So from the beginning, 150 years ago to the national leadership today, Kansas wheat farmers, like our corn and grain and sorghum producers, lead the nation in providing healthy, safe, and nutritious food supply, using sustainable practices to preserve the land for future generations. And before I get in real trouble, I have to introduce my wife. She's my partner in farming. We farm in Scott and Lane County and Finney County, approximately 12,000 acres of dry land. I haven't been using any water, only what the Lord gives me. So we grow hard white wheat and food-grade sorghum, which is white sorghum. My son and my nephew also farm with me. Two of my handlers, Shana DeGroot and Marsha Boswell back here, they have their finger on the trigger of my shock collar if I talk too long. So thank you for letting me disseminate this information to you, and I'd be happy to try to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. And I apologize, committee. We had there's a new way, I guess, LAS wants to do things, but we made an executive decision on the fly. So everything now is uploaded. They said stuff that's available online not to do that, but I think we can do that on the short term today. So if you want to see Mr. Supas's presentation, it is on there, and so are the other commodities. So, by the way, I mean, I said where Kent Moore was from, Ron Supas from Dighton, and every time I drive through there, I try to honk my horn to make sure, see if he's awake.
You're the guy that does
Yep.
that in the middle of the night.
That's right. That's right. So, and Ron is a very humble guy. He has been in leadership positions in wheat for a number of years. In fact, very recently was the chair of the Wheat Foods Council, and so his passion for the nutritional value of wheat is full on display, and was able to be in Manhattan when he brought their meeting there to the International Grains Program, and the passion that he has for more than just a strict commodity is well noted. So, questions for Ron Supas and the Wheat Commission? You must have done a very good
Nothing
job.
about HB4 in Argentina? No.
Well, you know, I didn't say you're done yet.
Nothing about heavy metals?
Well,
Okay.
but now, we don't know anything about that. We assume it's
Okay.
all pure and clean, but you do bring up a good point, I think, when you talk about Russia and Ukraine and the way they're kind of driving this market, if you will. We have heard reports over the last couple of years, you know, things were bad in Ukraine. We all know they are. We see those pictures. But farmers are still able to get that crop in. What's the intelligence, or what, you know, from the standpoint of the commission? I mean, we're not talking politics here. We're simply talking markets and moving that grain. I mean, how bad could it be? Because we've got other factors here, like the value of the dollar, and we have a new trade team that's going to be assembled, I guess, someday to get those started. So maybe the bottom line question is, what do you think the prospects are for wheat here in Kansas?
I thought I raised an average crop last year, average 43 bushel. I think that's what the state average was. Feeling pretty good that I was going to maybe break even or get close to it. The price of wheat dropped $2, so I'm in the hole there. As far as answering your question, I think we need to take a look at, I've been a proponent of hard white wheat for years. We started doing this 30 years ago. It just appears to me, since Russia and the Ukraine and all the other countries, with the exception of Argentina and Canada, are not producing hard white wheat, but yet we have customers throughout the world that keep asking us for that. So why aren't we producing it? I don't know. The industry is not totally on board doing that, but I think if we could possibly turn a third of our production in Kansas and Texas and Oklahoma, we could access a different market than Russia is. We'd be going to Asia rather than South America or Mexico, and that would help. I don't know. It seems like Russia should run out of wheat someday, but that's not happening, especially when they steal it from the Ukraine. So
True.
I don't know if I answered your question.
Representative Schlangen-Siepen?
So two things. So first, you mentioned hard white wheat. Tell me a little more about it. What are the characteristics of hard white wheat that open the markets you mentioned?
Well, if you like hard red wheat, you'll love hard white wheat. Hard white wheat is a sweeter, milder tasting wheat than hard red, even though they have the same line, same parents. The best thing about hard white is it's conducive for whole grain, and so you use the whole kernel. So maybe in the future here, with a little bit of help from the national government on food perspectives and whole grains, maybe hard white will start getting promoted. But part of the problem is, if you go to the grocery store and start buying these loaves of hard white whole grain, you're going to pay a lot of money for that compared to regular patent flour. I don't see a reason for that. I don't know why it's so expensive, but we are being taken advantage of also, like in western Kansas right now. Hard red winter wheat is 15 cents higher if I sell it at the elevator than hard white, but yet the big millers buy the hard white at the 15 and blend it with their red, sometimes to improve the red. So anyway, don't know if that confused you.
No, I find that highly interesting, actually. And the other question, since you raised the heavy metals, I like, plant-based protein bars, and all of a sudden, everything's popping up on my news feed saying how dangerous they are because of all the heavy metals. So can you give me a little background on what's going on there?
Well, I don't think we have a problem yet, but I've been doing some research. There are several states in the U.S. that are testing all of these phosphorus levels to see what kind of metals are in them. I think Kansas needs to start doing that. Missouri's doing it. So does that mean if they don't take it, it comes over here? I don't know. But on my farm, we do soil testing every year and test for those things. And I've kind of cut back on the phosphorus use. I don't want to give phosphorus a bad name. There are a lot of different kinds of phosphorus, and some of them have more heavy metals than others, and concentrations of different metals are different. So, but I think we need to take a look at it. I know at times with white food grade sorghum, we run into a problem with baby food. Maybe cadmium's a little bit too high. Well, that's when you're talking about Europe. Their standards are different.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Seibert.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You bring up an interesting point when you talk about that sweet white wheat. Is that what they make them Hawaiian rolls out of that are so good and sweet?
I don't know, where do you get those? I need to go try one of those.
I was just wondering, I thought about
Well,
that because they're white and the bread it's really good.
I think with hard white wheat, you use less sugar than you do with hard red, because red's got a thicker bran and it's a darker color most of the time. But it's one thing I've told USDA, if you're going to start shipping wheat over to these as food aid, most of those people over there grind their flour in their kitchen. So send them something that tastes good. They don't probably have sugar to add to it. So.
Well, they're pretty good.
Well, I'll have to find some.
You never had Hawaiian rolls?
Yes, he has.
Okay.
Representative Rozier. Oh, I'm sorry, Representative Minix first, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to illustrate something to the non-crop production people here in the room. You were talking about on your farm you grow wheat and food-grade sorghum. And can you tell us briefly what you do with that sorghum?
Most of my sorghum goes to either New Life there in Scott City or pet food. We're sending some now for kitty litter, making kitty litter out of it, which is kind of a neat idea because once the cats are finished with this, you take it out and put it in your yard for fertilizer, and you don't have to throw it away.
Okay. What I'm trying to illustrate here is these gentlemen are actual farmers. They do this for a living. They represent these associations, and yet in wheat, you have a farmer who also grows grain sorghum. I'm guessing in corn, you have a rotation back there also. The soybean people and grain sorghum will tell you the same thing. There are sometimes, as you illustrated, soybeans after a wheat crop in the stubble of the wheat crop has much higher yield. And so even though they're representing their associations here today, they're wearing multiple hats back there, and they have to because of the economics of things. Am I close, Ron?
When you're in an area where you get 14 inches of moisture a year maybe, and don't get it at the right time, you have to have drought-tolerant crops, and sorghum is one of those, and so is wheat. So that's we're talking about that HB4 thing. Now that's a genetically modified gene that's put in. It's not modified gene, but it's a gene out of sunflower that's been put into wheat to enhance the drought tolerance, like 15% or something like that. If it does that, I don't know. We can do the same thing here with gene markers and the CRISPR technique, which is not transgenic. So it just takes a little longer. But you're right, the stubble is very important in our part of the country. It stops erosion, stops too much heat, collects moisture. It's my cover crop. I can't grow a cover crop and expect to grow another crop that's a money-making crop because I'd use all my moisture. So we use the stubble.
Yeah, thank you. Representative Rozier.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, my bread is made with grain from the Grain Science and Industry from K-State, the Milling Science and Management Program, homegrown. Speaking of which, I saw in your presentation that 3-to-1 state funding match. Is there a limit, or is there a dead,
That's
like a
just
life?
how that program was set up, I think.
Okay.
We've had other matching funds on programs of 1-to-1.
Okay, but there, as far as you know, there's not a lifeline on that
I don't know.
match?
You know,
No.
Marcia? They don't think so.
Good to know. My second question, so Pakistan, the fourth largest, fifth largest wheat producer in the world. Last year, around May, they were having some issues with their supply chain and their government policies. Do you know anything about the status of how that's going, or where that's at with needs addressed in Pakistan?
No, I don't.
Okay,
No.
I'll do my homework.
Well, just so you know, China's the largest producer of wheat. India's next, and then probably the UK, and then probably US, and then maybe Pakistan or somebody. I don't know. I don't know what's going on there.
Sounds to me like a freshman assignment to bring us bread and a book report.
She can give you the rest of the book
Yes,
report.
no.
I need to go home.
I know, that's all right. Any other questions? Very good.
Thank you.
Okay, thank
Appreciate
you,
it.
Ron. Appreciate it. Okay, up next, soybean, and Raylan, is that Raylan Phelan, who is a soybean producer from, I think, Topeka, right? Is that?
Melbourne.
Melbourne, that's right.
Melbourne, Kansas.
Okay,
So,
that's it, yes. Welcome to committee.
As Representative Rogers said, I'm Raylan Phelan from Melbourne, Kansas. I'm a fifth-generation farmer. My great-great-grandpa homesteaded in just north of Linden, Kansas, back in the late 1800s. And I don't farm that land today. We moved south to Melbourne in the 40s. My grandpa and my dad did, but I'm still farming, and I'm proud to be a fifth-generation farmer. And I've been on the Kansas Soybean Commission about 7 years. Prior to that, I was on the Kansas Soybean Association. And the difference between the association and the commission is for the checkoff. The association is the political arm of the Kansas Soybean Group. And I went through many roles there, ended up as president, chairman of the board, and I had many opportunities to come to the State House and also go to Washington, D.C. And here a couple weeks ago, Caleb, he asked us, could you give the presentation for the commission? And I said, yeah, I probably can. I need to get my suit out. And so I got my suit out. You know, I wear, today you go to church, people don't wear suits like they used to. When I was a little kid, everybody wore suits. So I got this suit out, and the last time I'd wore it is when I was on the association, and we went to see Senator Roberts. And we walked in to see Senator Roberts, and I looked at him, and he looked at me. We both had the same suit on. So I thought that was kind of cool. And actually got my picture taken with him and got to sit in the chair and went through all that. So enough of that. Back to the commission and why I'm on here. I believe in soybeans. I believe in farmers. I believe in growing grain and livestock here at home and feeding our nation. And that's just great, to have the other representatives, the corn, the sorghum, the wheat growers here today, all of us working together for the same common goal to raise food for a growing world and to feed a growing world. That's what it's all about. The commission is 7 selected soybean farmers from around the state, and they are in different geographical areas. There are 2 commissioners that are at large. I'm one of the at-large positions, and how those are selected, it's based on a vote. And so I was lucky enough to be elected and reelected. We all serve as volunteers. There's no pay for it, and it's because we believe in what we do. And one of the reasons, I serve on here is because I grow soybeans, I want to promote soybeans, and I want to further the development of them, and educational also. To talk just a little bit about educational, Corn's done a great job, their educational program. We've done a little bit of work kind of on the shirt tails and a little bit of collaboration with them, and it's a research experience for teachers. And basically what it is, it's a 3-week deep dive where science teachers and even elementary teachers from around the state come up to Kansas State, and Brian McCornack, he is the facilitator of this group, and they teach these teachers about growing soybeans, growing corn, growing wheat, growing sorghum, and tell them all about agriculture. Teach them about pests, teach them about insects, teach them about herbicides, fertilizer, just the whole gambit. And then the teachers take this back to their classrooms and spread the wealth to their students. And it's been a very successful program, and I'm very passionate about it, as many of our chairmen and commissioners and our staff is also, and we want to continue to support that so that we can not only educate the teachers, but educate the students that are there, that will learn from them. We talked just a little bit about checkoff, and that's who I represent, is the Kansas Soybean Commission and the checkoff. And what it is there was a checkoff that was implemented back in the early 90s where the Soybean Commission takes 0.5% of the first point of sale to sell and uses this funding to help with the promotional, educational, research, and market development. So, excuse me 1 second here. So, a bushel, just to give you an idea how much that amounts to. Anybody know what the price of soybeans is today? Ken, you probably know.
Not now. Is that right?
We'll say $10. Right at $10. I mean, a little bit more, a little bit less. So, a bushel of soybeans. Does anybody know what the quantity of a bushel of soybeans is? 60 pounds. Or one of these right here, 60 cups of these. So that's equivalent to about $10. 60 cups of these will fill 2 5-gallon buckets full, and you'll have right at a bushel, give or take a little bit. And so $10 a bushel, 0.5% equates to about a nickel is what is the checkoff is, and comes back to the state of Kansas. We keep half of that in the state of Kansas, and then we send the other half to the United Soybean Board. And soybean board is made up of 75 farmers from 30 of the soybean producing states around the United States. And we are our state, it's based a little bit on the population and the acres that you grow, but we have 3 directors that represent the USB. One from Onega is Lance Rezac. Charles Atkinson, he is from Great Bend, and then Kurt Marth, he's from out around the Colby-Oakley area, and they represent us on this USB. Lance also is a Kansas Soybean Commissioner, too. So that's the money is, we keep half of it here in the state. The other half goes to the USB, and they use a little bit larger, or use it for larger projects, and here in the state we keep it a little bit more at home. We do fund a few projects that are regional and national, and I'll talk just a little bit about those in a little bit. But in 2024, which ran through July 2023 to June of 24, our collections were about $3.5 million. And we spent that year about $5.8 million. And that was to fund some continuing projects and also some of the innovation projects that are going on at Kansas State. And I'll visit a little bit more about those shortly. But with those expenditures, we had a little bit of a surplus build up, but we thought, this is a good thing to help fund the K-State Innovation Project that's going on. And that's one of the things that the funds have been used for. It's a land grant institution, and it's a $4 million commitment that's going to be over 5 years. And it'll help educate the public, it'll help educate students, and help help us to the promotional efforts and educational efforts of Kansas soybeans. So additionally, with the talk a little bit about the ag innovation that's going on. They are using some soy-based concrete sealers and stains. Some of the carpet that is in the offices, it'll be from soybean products. Some of the paints from soybean products and insulation, and all of these are products of the soybean checkoff. Some of the other things that we've been very heavily involved with from the soybean side is biodiesel and the renewable diesel, soybean-based car tires, and then also we spend a fair amount of the checkoff dollars for research for new soybean varieties at Kansas State. Now, we don't just spend it just at K-State. We spread the wealth around the other universities around the state of Kansas. KU, they have a great biodiesel lab that they are working on. Been to it a couple times, and they do a great job. And the research that they're doing has been instrumental in helping build the biodiesel market that it is today. Fort Hays, they've got a great program. Pittsburgh State, they've been into some of our plastics and foam products and development of that, and they do a great job with that. We also do some funding at some of the lower, well, not lower level, but some of your technical colleges, like Seward County, Beloit, and that is more in the diesel mechanics area to help educate and teach mechanics that are coming up through that, hey, biodiesel is a good product. It's great for your engines. It doesn't cause the problems that it did maybe 25, 30 years ago when it got a bad rap. So we're helping to shift that needle a little bit. So as you probably know, in 2023, the price of soybeans, average price of soybeans was around $14 a bushel. In June of 2024, the price of soybeans was about $11 a bushel, $11.80 a bushel. And so based on that, our collections are based on bushels and then also based on the amount of what the income is. So our budget was down, but for this year, we believe it's going to be up maybe a little bit, or at least maybe stay level. The average yield for soybeans is 35 bushels for the last year, based on the ag statistics. And we're hoping that maybe the price will come up and we can continue to maybe do some additional funding down the road. There's 4 million acres of soybeans planted in 2024, and we export about half of those soybeans. So as a commission, we're always looking to be leaders for the future and invest our checkoff dollars in ways that benefit our state's enterprising soybean farmers. We strive to create progress powered by Kansas farmer with every dollar that's spent. And this is through the funding for the market, new uses, development, research and education, and outreach efforts, which I've talked a little bit about. So when we spend these dollars, and we meet every year and we know what our budget is, we have a pretty good idea, within a few dollars, and we have several groups. They may be 30 to 40 presentations from around the state that people will come and request funding for their projects. Some of them get funded, some of them don't get funded because, one, it's got to meet the criteria. Is it going to help the growth of soybeans? Is it going to help with the promotion? Will it help with the education? And some of them do get funded, some of them don't get funded. So we get a large variety of different projects from around the state, and we want more of it. We've asked Kansas State and our other universities, bring us more projects. It's something that's innovative, that'll be the next new thing that can help, take that soybean market to the next level. So some other organizations that the Kansas Soybean Commission is involved with, one that's near and dear to my heart is the Soy Transportation Coalition, which I currently serve as the vice chairman of that. And I'll tell you just a little bit about the Soy Transportation Coalition. You may have heard the executive director, Mike Steenhoek, talk on the radio, or maybe seen him on RFD TV or seen him on other TV stations. But what the Soy Transportation Coalition is, it's to help build and look at and fund the infrastructure of our roads, our bridges, and then also our export terminals to help grow those and help make, so we can, when beans are grown in the state of Kansas, we can get them out to other countries. And whether it's through the port in the Gulf of Mexico, or whether it's in Washington State, possibly the East Coast, Savannah port. Those are all great ports, and take our products and sell them. And it's just, it's promotion and getting a good product to a good customer that they know that they can use it and it'll get good results with. A couple of other things that we're involved with is the export soybean, United Soybean Export Council, and then also the Clean Fuels Alliance, which we have Kansans that are actively involved with those. On the United Soybean Export Council, Lance Rezac from Onega, he's currently the chairman. And on the Clean Fuels Alliance of America, which was formerly the Biodiesel Board, Bob Hazelwood from Barrington, Kansas, he's on their governing board. So we've got great representation there. So if you want specifics on any of the projects they're funding, we can get with staff, and they'd be glad to get you that information. Talk just a little bit about the checkoff programs and the transparency. The Soybean Promotion and Research and Consumer Information Act was published in the Federal Register July 9th of 1991, which was establishing the National Soybean Checkoff. While no public tax dollars were used or are used in the implementation of this checkoff, this federal law governs oversight and compliance. Things like elected farmer representation, notification requirements of the board meetings, financial audits, annual compliance checks with the USDA, and even the annual report presentation to the Kansas Legislature is all part of the strict governance and oversight of the checkoff. You will see in the supporting documents, which you have, I believe, Ken said, on your iPads or laptops, that the summary report from the outside accredited accounting firm who completed the FY23 audit of our financials. These oversight activities are taken very seriously and ensure that the Kansas Soybean Checkoff remains truly farmer-led, farmer-funded, and working for the betterment of our state's 16,000 soybean farmers. I'm proud to serve on the behalf of the Kansas farmers. I thank you for your service on representing our great state of Kansas and from your different areas of the state. And I thank you for hearing our report. A couple of people I'd like to introduce today that are part of the Kansas Soybeans is Caleb Little and then Gary Reeser. They are on staff at Kansas Soybeans, and they can help with any questions that we might have that I can't answer. So thank you for allowing me to make this presentation.
Very good. Questions? Representative Schlangenstein.
Tell me a little bit about soybean oil and tire production. So Goodyear is apparently the leader in developing rubbers that use soybean oil, and apparently that helps with traction in wet weather and winter conditions. Is your organization involved in some way in the research that goes into that? Is that more done at the Goodyear laboratory?
Yes. And yes, the United Soybean Board, which half of the checkoff goes to USB, they've been very heavily involved with the research and production of those tires. And so that's, from the state level, we haven't been so much involved. I have seen them. I've heard good reviews for them. Availability has been a little bit tough, but I think that's getting better as the time and we get more use and get experience with them, and they get more production of them.
Do you have any idea what percentage of soybean production goes into industrial use of that kind, for example?
I do not know that. I don't know. That's a question that I could refer to Caleb.
Is that all right, sir?
Yeah, it's fine. And just state your name, Caleb, for the record.
Yeah, thanks, committee. Caleb Little, Administrator for the Kansas Soybean Commission. About half of the soybean oil in the U.S., of the U.S. soybean crop, still goes into the food, human consumption. The other half goes into industrial products. Most of that is fuels, biodiesel and renewable diesel, but a small portion of that half goes into all the other industrial products that Raylan mentioned.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Representative Blex.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your report. So let me get this right. Corn gets a penny a bushel at 56 pounds. Wheat gets 2 cents at 60 pounds. And soybeans gets roughly 5 cents if it's $10.
Correct.
You get more if it's 15.
Right.
Why such a broad spread of saying,
know-
can you answer how much money that's generating on an average year?
Yeah, I
And
can
I'd like
answer
maybe
that.
the other
So,
two.
so roughly, it will generate, let me get my figures here, about, the total amount collected is about $6 million, roughly, $6 to $7 million. Kansas gets about $3.5 million, $3 to $3.5 million. We get half of it. So how that came into being, some of my predecessors, that's how, they said there's going to be a fluctuation of price, probably more than bushels. And so they thought, their forethought was then, we need to get as much as we can. And to further the production and research and development and marketing of the soybeans. And it was done, many years ago. How they came to the 0.5%, 1/2 of 1%, I can't tell you.
What about corn and wheat? What do they generate?
If corn and wheat, if you don't know, well, you can do it now, or Marcia, if you know, come on and state your name for the record, please.
Marcia Boswell, Kansas Wheat, Vice President of Communications. So Ron mentioned an average crop would be 325 million bushels. It's 2 pennies per bushel, so that would be $6.5 million for income on an average crop, which we have not met for the past couple of years.
Do we know for corn?
With a typical crop for the state of Kansas, we're in that $6.5, $7 million per year. That's what we kind of expect anyway.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. If I could shed a little bit of light, I remember when the United Soybean Board, the National Checkoff came in, it was the last one that was done. I believe Secretary Glickman was the Ag Secretary at the time, if I remember right. And we had the same questions going through, and why is every one of them different? And I think as the checkoffs went through, from an investment standpoint, the first ones were just a little bit, and then as we get to soybeans, I always thought the soybean probably did it right as far as from a checkoff standpoint, as far as to be able to make that investment, not to have some of that herky-jerky stuff with the flexibility of crops. And this isn't advocating one way or the other. This is just, it just happens to be at the time. It's much like with the Farm Bill. Good times, Farm Bill's different when they're bad times. Right. And so that's really kind of the way it is. And Kansas is a little bit of a mirror on their state checkoffs of what the national checkoffs are with wheat, a referendum, or so on. So if that adds a little bit of light to it.
And I'll add to this that, prior to 2022, we had some pretty good prices. We had some pretty good beans yields. And we actually, built up a little bit of a reserve on the commission side. Well, here we're sitting with, $3 or $4 million extra. The timing of the Kansas Ag Innovation really was pretty good, because there was discussion between myself and several of the other commissioners who said, we're not a bank here. We need to be spending this money to help promote the use of our soybeans, to make the market better. And so I really believe by the Ag Innovation Center that's being worked on in Kansas State right now, the timing was right. It's a land-grant university. Many of us have attended there. Many of our kids have attended there. Maybe many of our forefathers, our grandparents attended Kansas State. So it's a great university. Not to say that the rest of our universities are good, but it's the way it worked out.
Understand? Okay. I think the questions, seeing none, we'll make sure we don't run much over time.
Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Before we bring Mr. Knievel up, we also, Representative Neely and Representative Droege are on WebEx. They're still feeling under the weather, so they are in attendance, if you will, here as part of the committee. And Representative Rozier has done her homework while those presentations were going on. Pakistan is now the 7th in the world in wheat production, right? And so everything else is a committee that is in an email that's floating around us. So for all that, so very good, thank you. This doesn't put you off the hook for making bread. She'll request not being on committee after next week, I'm afraid. Okay, as we wrap this thing up, let's go to White City. All these farmers are from small communities, and so Kevin Knievel with the Kansas Sorghum Checkoff. Welcome to committee.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, everybody, Mr. Chairman and committee. I'm here to present on behalf of the Kansas Grain Sorghum Commission a report of what's been going on this year maybe and what we see down the road. My name's Kevin Kniebel, and I serve as the vice chair of the Kansas Grain Sorghum Commission. I also serve on the advisory board for the collaborative Sorghum Investment Program, or CSIP. I farm near White City in Morris County. Myself and my family raise sorghum as well as other crops. We also have a cow herd, both registered and commercial, and a feedlot that for the breeding stock doesn't make it in, or if the cattle don't make it through into the breeding herd, they get finished and we send those down the way. All my life I've grown sorghum, and I know my father in one way or another probably grew some type of sorghum. And what I like about sorghum is not only the crop for grain, but also the residue it has, and not only above the ground but below the ground. The roots provide improved soil health and erosion control. The residue above provides feed for our livestock, as well as, we had this big snow recently. Those stalks, they retain that snow in the field, doesn't blow off, and hence it can melt and provide a water source for future crops. We can be proud that Kansas is the #1 sorghum state in the nation, growing over 50%, 56% of the U.S. supply of sorghum, and that is spread. Sorghum is grown coast to coast, Pennsylvania to California, and north into the Dakotas, south to the Gulf. So it's quite the diverse crop and does well. The sorghum board is a farmer-led group. We're committed to research, promotion, education, and that's our goal, is to provide that to enhance markets and profitability of sorghum. Joining me today are our staff. Adam York, he's our administrator for the commission, and also is Andrew Lee. He's a Barry Flinchball Fellow from K-State. He's in his second year there, I believe. He's traversed the halls around here quite a bit. Was snagged by a lot of people for some reason. But, also with us is the managing director of CSIP, or the Sorghum Center for Sorghum Improvement, which manages CSIP, and that is Dr. Sarah Sexton Bowser, and she's a great asset, as well as all our staff on Team Sorghum. CSIP's a public-private entity that it gets its funding from the Commission, K-State, KDA, and the Center for Sorghum, or United Sorghum Checkoff Program. We could go on about all the checkoffs, but I think each commodity already wore that out, so it's very much similar. I guess the difference would be our revenue is based on dollars collected at, say, the elevator, and it's 0.6%. If you do the math backwards and use average yields, soybeans, sorghum, wheat, it all ends up to be about the same amount per acre given an average yield. Your corn may be more just because of the sheer volume, but if you're only at 2 cents instead of a nickel, or it's relatively the same per acre. They just they grow a lot more of those other crops than sorghum. Sorghum is held its own as far as acres and done well. So that's where we're at with that. You know, the CSIP program is very important in what it does. You know, we look at genetic traits. Being on the advisory board, I'm privy to a lot of this information, and we make decisions based on what we think are best. We don't okay everything. We don't rubber stamp it and go on. It has to have merit, and you know, looks like it'll get results. The program focuses on high impact traits, so we can get those traits into the bag and out in the country to help the producers, but also focuses on other things like we've had some projects that you know, the beneficial aspects of having more protein, more starch in some varieties, and then also we have some byproducts such as a biofilm, you know, that can be made into a plastic. So it's you know, there's pretty diverse things that are looked at. On the education side, we've had field days, producer field days. They were well attended, and it helped show producers how to best manage stress, disease, maybe some weed and herbicide challenges. And then on the, also, I guess it's education/marketing side, we had trade teams come in, one from China. They visited Western Kansas and seen the ethanol industry and grain handling facilities out there. And then we were happy to host a trade team from India. And we listened to them and found out some of the things they do. We had them in the farm shops. They were fascinated with the little rock sorter sitting there that came from their country. They had to all take their picture with that. But maybe we can trade a few more of those for sorghum or something. But they then went to K-State for a day or two, and they learned how sorghum could benefit them in their poultry feeding industry. And they were really excited with what they learned, and I think that was it was a good trip for them, and for us, it fostered those relationships to further trade. You know, one of the reasons they are looking to sorghum is they have an ethanol mandate in their country, and to clean up emissions, they're producing more ethanol. And I didn't ask what they do with the distiller grains, is because as Muslims, or mostly Muslim nation, they don't probably eat very much beef, but you can integrate a little bit of distillers in other products. But anyway, so that their ethanol mandate is just going to accelerate to the point that they're going to have more feed grain all the time. So we hope that comes to fruition as far as things that they learned in their trip. So I think I've covered most everything. I suppose I would be remiss not to talk about its water conserving properties. Sustainable water conservation isn't only good for our natural resources, but it's good for all our rural communities that rely on those, you know, all those jobs and all that goes with having a resilient feed source in the country. So, you know, promotion of the sorghum crop and its profitability is something that's very valuable to our producers, and that is one of the Kansas Grain Sorghum Commission's commitment, is to make sure that happens, that they maintain that profitability, and hopefully we can enhance and improve markets to make that happen. So, you know, and I'm sure you've read through, by the time I've been up here trying to speak, I'm sure you read through the report, and if not, it's in a packet or been presented to you, and along with our 2024 audit. and I'm really pleased that you let me present to you today, and thank you. And I will be happy to answer any questions, and I do have my very capable team back here to answer what I don't know.
All right, very good. Kevin, thank you so much. Questions? Representative Schlingensieben.
We can bet on you.
I'm very loquacious today. My apologies, but I get real excited. Last biennium, we had a presentation on sorghum, I believe, from someone at K-State. And
She's probably here.
She's here. Is that?
That's Sarah. Yes.
You're coming back.
Dr.
Okay.
Sarah.
Well, that was a presentation that really left an impression. And I think especially you were talking about at that time going to Africa, where I guess this plant originally hails from, and looking at some of the varietals there, and trying to figure out how to enhance the water conservation properties of the plant. My question really to you, sir, was I think I understood you correctly, and I may not have. You said sorghum is grown in a lot of different places.
Yes,
Is
sir.
that historically or currently? Because I was amazed at the number, 56% of sorghum production comes out of the state of Kansas. Is that because we've gone from historically growing more to growing less, but now Kansas is kind of reinvigorating this particular crop? Or
I think if you look at the climate challenges that Kansas has, and so it fits Kansas, Oklahoma,
okay.
Texas, and even the drier parts of the Dakotas. That's where it ideally fits. You go back east, it may be certain areas want sorghum for either poultry or something, but pet food is very important. I mean, that's an up and coming market. It's lower starch as far as compared to maybe inclusion of wheat and corn in a dog food, and so it has health benefits. You can ask. I think the nominee for Health and Human Services is a big fan of sorghum. Good, bad, or otherwise. But anyway, and there's food products, human food products that are very healthy. I would invite you to go to the National Sorghum Producers website, and it's very interesting. They have a lot of, if you're into cooking with something else, sorghum is it. They have either whole sorghum, pearl sorghum, sorghum flour, you name it, they've got it. Then in New Life out in Scott City, they have all kinds of food products.
Sorghum sourdough, that might be a challenge. What do you think? Is that a thing?
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Minix?
Just to combine a few things said here today, Ron Supis grows food-grade sorghum for New Life Market. They can make any type of flour for pizza or bread. The M&M's was great. I'd kind of challenge you at the peanut butter cup maybe next time would be.
Cinnamon. Microphone, please. Gotta get you on record. Microphone, please.
I'm getting more hungry the more we talk about this, but
Yeah.
it's amazing. Sorghum, they'll make baby puffs out of it because it doesn't have the gluten in it in case you have children that are celiac or gluten intolerant. It's amazing the things basically soften it up and extrude it out, and you get these little puffy things that you feed your babies. It amazes me. And when we were on wheat, I almost talked about a gluten plant in Phillipsburg, and I'm surprised it didn't come up.
Well, I was trying to get everybody in. Not
Mr.
keep you
Chairman.
Too late, so.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
That's for
Thank
another,
you.
thank you. I appreciate it. Anything else for Kevin? All right. Thank you. And I thought another day we'll talk about, and maybe have K-State talk about the varieties for a higher protein wheat for our gluten and everything in Phillipsburg. So if you don't know, you'll know, and you'll continue to know. But what I'm even more surprised, committee, is with all this talk of bread and wheat, that Representative Schlingensieben didn't talk about his sesame, how good that works on buns. So, disappointed, but no. Okay.
Half a bushel in my driver's seat from McDonald's.
Is that it?
I have not found a market for that yet.
The sesame market is one that maybe we'll find with this administration. Who knows? All right. I think that's it. Any other questions? They're all still here. And if not, thank you again for being here and doing your annual presentation. I know it's been a long day for y'all, and I appreciate it. And also the tomorrow agribusiness leaders, thank you also for being here. I encourage you all to go out tomorrow night for that reception committee to the country club. I believe it starts at 5:30, something like that. Other announcements, we will not be meeting tomorrow. Thursday, we will have we will have a very short meeting for bill introductions, anything else. We will have, we're still working on next week's agenda. It will be out. We have Tuesday, right now, Monday, we're not scheduled to meet. Actually, we are, because we have one last day of bill introduction, so it'll probably be a short meeting there as well. We're still waiting for some phone call back, but Tuesday we will have a couple of presentations. Wednesday, we're looking at working a couple of bills. And so then there's been a kind of a backup, and as they get assigned, we're helping our friends in the Water Committee and the Ag Budget Committee as they get their work done on this new kind of sped up system that we'll do. And so the next couple of weeks, we plan to be pretty busy. I will do my best still not to meet on Fridays, but that means probably what we'll do, the plan is if we hear a bill, Wednesday, possibly working on a Thursday or a Tuesday and working on a Thursday. I want to kind of keep things moving. We're going to have to do pretty quick, but it's been a process that we're all kind of learning on how to keep everybody else going. So that is the key right now. So again, no meeting tomorrow, and we will meet on Thursday for a very short meeting, but watch your emails and the bulletin board as we'll probably make changes for next week. Anything else? We are adjourned.